Hey guys, Ozzy Communications, and welcome to my review of Trick or Treat. And Trick or Treat is as you can see, this is actually a custom DVD I made. The actual DVD is a piece of crap. It's a platinum release. Pretty much it's a VHS rip, and it has a shitty cover. So at least this has the original cover art. This is from some I found online. The picture quality could be a little bit better on the cover art, but I'll take it. You know, it's better than the crappy platinum DVD. And right off the bat, if you're a fan of this movie like I am, this is, in my opinion, without a doubt, the best heavy metal horror film out there. It actually was one of the first. So that's another thing. I mean, there were some other ones, like, I guess were considered maybe hard rock or rock heavy metal. Like, you know, I think Rocktober Blood, I think, came out after this. And I think crap like Terror on Tour came out in 1980. But come on, you can't have a hard, I'm not going to consider a movie that has a band dressed like clowns as a heavy metal horror film. Sorry. No, I'm not doing it. Because they're not heavy, I haven't even heard of a heavy metal band that dresses up like circus clowns. So, yeah, no. So, but anyway, you can make an argument the music in this isn't necessarily really metal either, because Fastway is more of hard rock than metal, which is one thing that I can kind of agree with the detractors of this film, but it doesn't matter. I still love Fastway in this film. I think the soundtrack is awesome in this movie. After Midnight is one of my favorite songs of the 80s, so yeah, I don't really have a problem, or, you know, I really like that song, After Midnight. Now, right before I get into the review of this movie, talk a little bit more of the DVD. Platinum DVD, Barely Nothing, has a misleading cover art, which has Ozzy Osbourne and Gene Simmons on the cover. It makes it look like they're the stars. They're not. They're only in cameos, but, you know, fun little cameos, though. Especially Ozzy Osbourne. In this movie, he actually plays his cameo is as a preacher who's talking on a talk show about how rock and roll is the devil's music. It's really hilarious because it's Ozzy Osbourne talking about how heavy metal and rock and roll are so bad and evil and are bad for our kids. So yeah, that's pretty funny. It was an inspired casting choice by the producers of this film. And one of the producers is actually Joel Solison, who would go on to produce Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. So, you know, that's pretty cool. But anyway, why I'm talking about the DVDs before I get into the full review is because for fans of the film like me, there's really some good news, but it's ultimately bad news if you live in the U.S. There's a new DVD Blu-ray combo pack, which also has a copy of the soundtrack, which is getting released in Germany at the end of this month. That's another reason why I'm reviewing this movie, is because, well, I was planning on reviewing it during Halloween, but I got caught up. I actually watched it on Halloween night, so, you know, that was pretty fun. I had a fun time. But it's getting released for the first time in widescreen and high definition transfer of the film on Blu-ray and DVD, and with a CD copy of the soundtrack in a special limited edition packaging in fucking Germany. So yeah, for people like me who are fans of this movie, you want to see the movie? You want to see a Trick or Treat in high def, like you've never seen it before, and have like interviews with heavy metal artists talking about heavy metal horror films, and you want to copy the soundtrack on CD and also have a nice Blu-ray and a DVD combo pack, a nice cool little collector, you know, booklet that comes with the case, you're gonna have to pay $54 for it. And then on top of that, you're also going to have to buy yourself a region-free Blu-ray player if you don't already have one, which I've looked it up. The cheapest one I could find is like $125. All the other ones are infinitely times more expensive than that. So yeah, you're going to have to spend close to $200 just to be able to watch one fucking movie. So yeah, it's a little bit of a rant here because I'm a big fan of this movie and I would love to have that set, but I can't afford it and I won't be able to watch it. So, I call bullshit on that. This region locking shit is bullshit. It's a bunch of fucking shit and I'm tired of it. Even people who live in Germany or people who live overseas, they're tired of it too, because they can see the stuff that's not region locked in their country, but the stuff that gets released over, in the U.S., they can't see. So it's bullshit all the way around. The DVDs didn't start out with region coding, so why now do we have to deal with this shit? Quit it, stop it, cut it out. It's bullshit, it's stupid. There's no reason to have region locking. People will buy things. Like, I would buy Trick or Treat if I could. I would even spend the money, save up, and buy that set if I could actually watch it. But I can't. So, and I heard that it might be region-free, but I don't know. I've heard things that are region-free, but aren't really. So I'm not going to go for that. I'm not going to believe that until I see it. So, yeah, just really. And even if it was region-free, $54 is way too much fucking money to spend on one movie. So, yeah. I'm not really happy about this. I should be psyched that it's finally getting the proper treatment on DVD and getting a Blu-ray release, but the fact that it's getting only released in Germany and it's $50 fucking is not what I call a fun thing or something I'm really looking forward to. So yeah, but for those of you who have the money and those of you who do have a region-free Blu-ray player or a DVD player, go right ahead, Go for it. Pre-order it right now. You can pre-order it on Amazon, their Germany site. Because Amazon has one that sells stuff in Germany as well. Not only, just like it's pretty much the same as the U.S. Amazon site, but it's one for Germany. So go ahead and go over there and pre-order it. But yeah, I just think it's a bunch of bullshit. And I guess originally Anchor Bay wanted to release a 2-disc special edition of this movie. Or at least a special edition of it in 2006, a 20th anniversary edition, but they couldn't secure the rights, and so it was scrapped. Yeah, because of rights issues for the music, because some money-grubbing producers or Fastway wanted to get their dick in a knot, and like, oh man, what? They didn't have a problem with it getting released on VHS, but on DVD, no. They didn't put up a fuss over the platinum DVD release, so I don't understand. They're bullshit. But anyway, yeah, it's just a bunch of bullshit piled on top of more bullshit when it comes to the story of this movie on DVD and getting the proper treatment, which sucks. But anyway, into the actual movie and why I enjoy it so much. First off, if you're familiar with my channel, I reviewed a bunch of other heavy metal horror movies, and some of them I had to remove due to copyright reasons, but some of them are still up, and majority of them are shit. Okay, Black Roses is got a good soundtrack and some good makeup effects. That's about it. I don't understand the appeal of that movie, to each their own. Just like some people probably don't understand why I like this movie so much. But I don't understand the cult following Black Roses has. But the soundtrack is good and some good makeup effects. Other pieces of crap like Ghoul School, Monster Dog, Lone Wolf are just piles of fucking garbage. So this is at least. Is it a great film? I'm not going to say Trick or Treat's a great film, but it's a really good movie for its genre. Because heavy metal horror is not a very good genre of movies. Because I've seen a lot of them. So, yeah, trust me, there's not a lot of aces in the hole when it comes to this genre. So, Trick or Treat, definitely, in my opinion, stands above the rest. Now, the film was released in 1986, and it was released by the Dino De Laurentiis Entertainment Group. And it's directed by Charles Martin Smith. It's actually the directorial debut of Charles Martin Smith. I almost thought he was a capable director. I mean, I really liked his work in 50-50 with Peter Weller and Robert Hayes, and he does a good job here. For a first time that this actor has directed a movie, he did a really good job, in my opinion, with this film. Now, the film is written by Joel Sorensen, who was also producer of this film, also had a hand in writing it, and so did Rhett Topham, who Rhett Topham ended up writing. He only wrote this film, and then the last thing he wrote was 976 Evil, and I would definitely say I prefer this over 976 Evil. And he wrote a few episodes of Freddy's Nightmares, Cabin Fever, and No More Mr. Nice Guy. But then he pretty much retired and hasn't been heard from since. Which I think is too bad, because he's a competent writer. And what's interesting, too, about the screenplay is there were 2 uncredited writers. And one of them was actually James Wong, who would go on to write Final Destination. So I thought that was interesting. I don't know exactly what he added to the film, because he was uncredited, so I don't really know the whole story behind it, but I thought that was an interesting sort of thing. Now, the film stars Marc Price as Eddie Weinbauer. And Marc Price is known as Skippy from Family Ties, which I've never watched Family Ties. I was too young. You know, I was born in '89, so I didn't grow up with the show. The only thing I know about Family Ties is the theme song, and Michael J. Fox is in it. But Marc Price plays this metalhead named Eddie Weinbauer. And you have a few other, you have Tony Fields, who plays Sammy Kerr, who's a rock star. And Sammy Kerr, interesting story about this character, originally he was supposed to be played by Blackie Lawless, the lead singer of Wasp. And even though I think Tony Fields does a great job, I think he does a good job, I really don't have a problem with Tony Fields. Which is interesting about Tony Fields is he was a solid gold dancer. So he was a solid gold dancer, and actually he happened to be gay. Which I don't have a problem with that. He pulls it off. I think he does a really good job in this film regardless. I didn't even know he was gay until I looked him up later. And then also, sadly, he passed away of AIDS a while back. So, rest in peace, Tony. You know, rest in peace, Sammy. You know, you were really rocking in this movie, and you'll be missed. So, Tony Fields didn't do a lot after this, which is too bad. I thought he had a nice presence to him, and he had this big, tall, imposing stature. And, you know, he's really flexible, probably goes to his whole solid gold dancer persona. But I thought he did a good job. But to be honest, when I think long and hard about it, if I could somehow change the past and make it so Blackie Lawless took the role instead of Tony Fields, I'd do it in a heartbeat. Because Blackie Lawless this seemed like a film that was tailor-made for him, and then also a soundtrack that was tailor-made for Wasp. Missed opportunity, because Wasp was a band that was pretty much well known for their sort of shock rock anyway, so it would have been perfect to have Wasp do the soundtrack for this. And what's interesting about this film too is there's a song in the soundtrack called "Scream Until You Like It," and what's crazy about that is that Wasp, Blackie Lawless, would actually go on to cover that song for Ghoulies 2, for the soundtrack for Ghoulies 2. And pretty much the Ghoulies 2 music video with Wasp and the little bit that he was in The Dungeon Master is the closest you can get to seeing Blackie Lawless in a horror film, which I think is really too bad. I mean, maybe he's not the best actor, but Tony Fields, you know, he was alright, but Sammy Kerr didn't have to be a great actor. Blackie Lawless would have been perfect. He really would have fit the film. And it would have made more sense about the whole demonic sort of, you know, satanic sort of nature or shock rock nature of the band that Sammy Kerr is fronting, hearing Wasp's music instead of Fastway. I really like Fastway's music. I really do. I think Fast Eddie Clarke is great. You know, Dave King, everybody's great in the band Fastway. And I love the soundtrack to this movie. I wouldn't, you know. It's great. It's a good second, you know, choice, but I still would have loved to have seen the first choice with Wasp doing the soundtrack and Blackie Lawless playing Sammy Kerr. It was a match made in heaven, and it's too bad it didn't work out. Now, the film, you have a few other actors and actresses, Lisa Orgolini and Doug Savant and a few other people. Lisa plays Leslie, who's sort of like a love interest for Marc Price. Tony Fields plays Sammy Kerr. Doug Savant plays Tim, who's this asshole, like he plays a good jock, and he's one of the biggest jerks I've ever seen in a film, to be honest. He's that type of bully that you want to pummel through the TV screen. And Elaine Joyce plays Marc Price, Eddie's mother. You have Glen Morgan, who plays Roger, who is Eddie's best friend. And then you have cameos by Gene Simmons as Nuke, who's this radio show host, who's friends with Marc Price, and Ozzy Osbourne is Reverend Aaron Gilstrom. Like I said, he plays a reverend in this movie, which is inspired casting, and a few other people here and there. And Charles Martin Smith, the director, also has a little bit role as one of the teachers. Now, the gist of the plot is that you have high school. Eddie Weinbauer is an outcast in high school. You know, he's a metalhead. He wears all of his metal, you know, t-shirts and everything. Listens to metal music, and for some reason, back in the '80s. I guess because you liked some of the best music that ever aired on any airwave or played through anybody's speakers, you're a nerd. So he gets mercilessly bullied at high school by these assholes, these asshole jocks. And what I really like about this film is that the way that they're bullying him, they take it serious. This movie's got serious balls. This movie's got big ass ass balls when it comes to showing these sequences of bullying. Like, I thought Christine was pretty bad, but this takes it up even another notch, because these bullies do things that is almost attempted murder on this poor kid. There's one scene in the film where they put a bunch of weights in his backpack and throw him in the swimming pool in the deep end. And literally, some girl, I think the girl who ends up being with him later, she has to go and try to save him pretty much. That's attempted murder. They literally could have killed that kid. There's a few other moments where they try to use shop tools to, severely damage the kid, or, break bones and shit like that. I mean, this is serious stuff. This film does a good job showing that there are bullies out there that aren't just calling you names. There are bullies out there that will physically not only just pummel you and punch you, and humiliate you, which they do. I mean, horrible scene where they literally he's in the locker room, and they make it so he can't get his pants because they take all his clothes or whatever and throw him somewhere, and I think they do something, and they throw him out basically into. They put him out into, there's a girls' volleyball game going on or something, and they throw him out into the court. And how humiliating can it be for that poor kid, for Eddie's, butt naked, and you have all these girls, of course, laughing at him and shit, because, what else were they supposed to do? Some of the girls were looking at him in horror, other girls were laughing because they thought it was funny, but still, that's the type of bullies we're dealing with. So the film does a great job making you sympathize with Eddie and his plight, and being like, okay, you get your revenge. Kick these fuckers' asses. They deserve it. What a bunch of dickheads. So the film does a really good job doing that. Now, Eddie's writing a letter to his hero, Sammy Kerr, and he puts the letter in an envelope, and he starts doing, his daily whatever household chores. And he watches, while he's doing his chores, he watches the news, and he hears this terrible, awful news that, the worst news he could ever possibly think of. His idol, Sammy Kerr, has died in a mysterious hotel fire. And so this completely devastates poor Eddie. And so then he goes to his friend Nuke, who's played by Gene Simmons, who, like I said, is a radio DJ, who actually knew Sammy personally. And I guess Sammy Kerr actually went to the same high school as Eddie did. And then to take Eddie's mind off the death of, his idol, Nuke gives Eddie the only copy of Kerr's last and only unreleased album, Songs in the Key of Death. It's a little bit corny, but at the same time pretty badass, on like an acetate disc, which I think was like a kind of like a promo disc or something like that. It wasn't actually, it was like one of the first discs, and it didn't get copied, mass produced, that kind of thing. And Nuke plans to play the album in its entirety on air at midnight and the Halloween as tribute, since according to Nuke, that was always Sammy's plan for the album's debut. But what happens is, Nuke already made a copy of the disc, of the record. So that's the reason why he gives him the acetate disc, the original record, because he already made a copy on tape that he'll play, on midnight, on Halloween. So Eddie takes this, this cherished possession back home, and he falls asleep listening to the record, and he has a really weird dream about the fire that killed Sammy Kerr. And then when he wakes up, he finds the record is skipping. And after listening to a few seconds, he comes to realize that there's something not right with this record. The words are really kind of, definitely kind of creepy, and don't make too much sense to him. So after previous experience, of rewinding records and trying to find hidden lyrics, which I like the fact that this film does a really good job using that idea. The idea of that was really popular back in the 80s at this time, in 86, where you had all the PRMRC and Tipper Gore and the whole thing, rock and roll heavy metal is evil and it's the devil's music, and this whole thing where everyone's a controversy about heavy metal records having hidden lyrics in them about the devil, that, if you play it backwards, it says stuff about the devil or whatever, worship the devil, worship Satan, all that kind of stuff, which is usually pretty much bullshit most of the time. But in this film, it takes that idea that was really prevalent in society at this time, where, all these people and parents are freaking out, like, oh my god, hidden messages, and it actually makes it real, and does it in a real clever way. So he starts playing it backwards, and then he realizes that it's Sammy Kerr speaking to him from beyond the grave. That was pretty cool. And I also like Eddie's room. Eddie's room was really cool. Like, this film was one of the first instances where heavy metal fans in the 80s could actually get a glimpse of this sort of underground sort of thing. Heavy metal, you know, became pretty much mainstream in the 90s and stuff like that, but in the 80s it wasn't as popular as it was in the 90s. It wasn't a popular thing to go out there and wear your Iron Maiden shirt or, you know, display your love of metal proudly. You were considered a nerd or a dweeb or something like that, you know. An outcast, a loner, a goth, you know, that type of... Not really goths, I don't know if they had that genre back then. But, you know, that clique. But yeah, you were just considered, you know, low beneath certain people. Even though the jocks and the popular people probably listened to a ton of heavy metal, because that was really popular back in the day. But they won't wear the shirts because, you know, you know, we can't represent Dio even though he's a rock god. But the whole thing is that it's just not popular. It's not the popular thing to do. You know, wear the turned up collars and look like a bunch of preppy douchebags instead. So you have these, you know, you could say that the metalheads back in the 80s were sort of like the genesis maybe of the goths that would go on, you know, in the 90s and now. So, but I just think it's really interesting when you look at the 80s and you think about, like, people who love metal were getting bullied. And I didn't know that, like, because this movie was released in 86 and... You know, when I was growing up, there wasn't any problem with wearing your metal shirts or anything like that in the 90s and the early 2000s. So you know, it's just interesting to see, you know, that was the case back in the 80s. And I guess I could understand because some metal songs have, like, lyrics that you could probably see in a game of Dungeons and Dragons. But still, you know... it's just one of those things, like, you don't really understand why he's getting bullied so much just because he's a metalhead. But then he ends up basically, you see a glimpse of his room, like I was saying, this underground culture. And he has all these wonderful, cool, vintage metal posters and this great, you know, record collection. And there's a scene later in the movie where he gets pissed off and starts tearing the posters off his wall. And I'm like, no! Don't do that! No! No, don't do that. He's tearing them up. You're like, no! Come on, man, don't do that. That's terrible. So, yeah, so I'm not the only one. For fans of metal and classic metal, to see him go in that room and just start tearing all the metal posters he had was just as terrifying as any of the horror scenes in this movie. So anyway, he realizes that Sammy's talking to him from behind the grave. And so, through playing this record backwards, Sammy starts talking to him and tells him about a plan. He tells him how he can get revenge on these bullies that like to torment him. You know, these dickheads. Since Sammy was bullied, he was in the same boat. He was bullied constantly in high school, and he would like to take revenge on bullies that he never got to take care of himself. So Eddie explains the situation to his best friend Roger, who reminded me a lot of the actor who played Bad Ronald in that crappy TV movie from the 70s. Who's highly skeptical of the whole thing, doesn't believe it is a bunch of bullshit. So at first the revenge is innocent enough, but after a while the plans started to become more sinister, eventually starting to involve murder. And so the revenge plans first start out like, you know, maybe causing some weird things to happen. The shop, you know, room, he brings the guys into the shop, the bullies into the shop, and he ends up... like, what happens, the guy's tie actually ends up getting caught in one of the spinning wheels. And, no, actually not that. What happens, actually, a unseen force puts his head down, and there's, like, a drill, and it's, like, coming towards his head. And, you know, Eddie manages to make it stop before, basically, the guy gets, you know, murdered, pretty much, with a drill through his head. And then really starts to get sinister and really strange, where... the main jock, the main bully guy, Doug Savant, he's going in with his girlfriend and to the lake or whatever, and she found this tape. What happens is Eddie, he felt bad for the stuff that he, you know, almost killing the poor guy. Well, not really. He's not really poor. He's a dickhead, but he felt bad for almost killing him, so he gave him a tape. A copy of the record that he made, the Sammy Kerr's last album, as a gift, and the guy took it, and then he and his girlfriend went to the lake, and she started playing it in the radio, played it in the cassette player in the car, or no, I think she had her own Walkman, and she started playing it with a Walkman. and you see this weird green mist this green mist comes out of the tape cassette player, and actually, yeah, that's a little bit later, but whatever. Who cares? I'll get into that. I'm just trying to think of the plot in the back of my head. I saw this movie like on Halloween, so now I'm doing the review now, so forgive me. So go back to what I was talking about before with the girl. She's listening to this thing on the radio, listening to the last Sammy Kerr's album on her Walkman, and the green mist starts coming out, and it looks like she's getting aroused, and like clothes are getting lifted up and stuff. You see a little bit of titties, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, comes this like slimy like monster. This like this creature of some sort that starts sucking face with her, and you're like, yeah. And that creature, I think, was actually made by and worked on by Kevin Yeager. So this film not only had Kevin Yeager, who would go on to be one of the most legendary makeup effects artists in the realm of film, but he also had two other legendary makeup effects artists who also worked on the movie. You had Doug Beswick, and Tony Gardner also worked on effects in the film. So you had not one, but you had three makeup special effects and visual special effects aficionados who worked on this movie. I thought that was really cool. You had three, soon-to-be or already legends in that field who were working on this movie. And the monster is really, I thought it was a really good effect. So it looks like she doesn't really get murdered. She just gets seriously injured, and she ends up in the hospital because she listens to the tape, and the monster comes out, and basically it looks like the headphones basically burned into her ears and melted her ears off, which is awful. So anyway, so after he had the revenge stuff, he doesn't go, it's innocent enough. Then the plans start to become murderous, and then Eddie decides enough is enough. I can't do this anymore, Sammy. I don't want to do this anymore, but Sammy won't let him. So Eddie then accidentally, he spills some soda on the record, which causes an electrical outage and a surge of some sorts, and gives Sammy just the amount of the energy he needs to get out of the record and be able to carry on his sinister plans on his own. And then after that, Eddie smashes his record player and stereo system after a personal face-to-face visit from Sammy, hoping to make sure he never sees this ghostly rocker in his room ever again. And so I really like the effects work. I think Tony Gardner and Doug Beswick worked on the speaker effects, where you see like the speaker, inside the speaker, you see like a hand, or you see the face poking out of it, kind of like the shot you would see in Nightmare on Elm Street, when Freddy's poking out of the wall. Same sort of thing here. And I like that. I like that. I always like that effect with the whole sort of bulging out of the wall, or in this case, bulging out of the speaker. And some really good, pretty good visual effects too for a moderately low budget flick. So anyway, with electricity, Sammy Kerr breaking out of the speaker, coming to life, and everything like that. So after the girl gets sent to the hospital, girlfriend of the bully gets sent to Roger Savant, gets sent to the hospital. Eddie recruits Roger to steal the tape out of the bully's car and tell him to destroy it. You need to destroy it. But his brother's being not his brother, his friend is being an idiot, and he doesn't understand, that, how serious this is. That, Sammy Kerr, is in this, he's going to cause some crazy shit to happen, and so, but Roger doesn't believe any of that. He's like, it's Sammy Kerr's last album, I want to listen to it, it's going to be awesome. So he lies to Eddie about it. Instead, he plays it in his own stereo system, and then Sammy Kerr comes in and pays him a visit. And then he orders Roger to play the tape at the high school Halloween dance, or he's going to kill him, pretty much. It's like, play this tape, or die. So then Roger does as he's told, of course. He doesn't want to die. And he goes to the dance to play the tape over the PA system. This is when Eddie then is informed of the tape being played, and he quickly attempts to reach the school to stop Sammy from causing any more trouble. When the live band takes stage for the performance of the dance, however, Sammy literally explodes at a lead singer's guitar amplifier and steals the show, which is an awesome scene. I really love this scene. There's a little bit of corniness to it, but that adds to the flavor and the charm of 80s movies. So he pops out of the speaker in a cool visual effect, and starts, banging his fist on his thigh, and then the Fastway starts playing After Midnight, which I think is really cool. I think Trick or Treat also is another song that they play too. And he starts playing with the guitar, and he explodes out of the amplifier, and the people in high school think it's just a tribute to Sammy Kerr, but then they realize the shit starts to get real when he starts strumming his guitar and firing electricity bolts at people and just incinerating them, which I thought was so cool. He's just like, damn, and then just incinerating people into ash. And then after the first few deaths, the audience is like, oh, fuck this, and gets the fuck out of Dodge, and they flee out of the school. And then you get to the climax where Eddie ends up reaching the school, but there's ambulances, police cars everywhere, and he goes about trying to save the people inside the school, but then Eddie realizes something. Sammy can only travel through radio signals, so no radios. That means there's no way for Sammy to carry out his plans. Which is kind of like, remember in my science project, where they try to go into the electricity, whatever towers, and try to blow them up to make sure that the science project thing doesn't suck up any more power. It's some of the same, kind of reminded me a little bit of that. So as he goes about, so Eddie goes on a path to destroying every radio he sees to prevent Sammy from continuing his rampage, which I thought was paced really well in this climax scene. And this leads to a final confrontation between Eddie and Sammy. And after reaching the radio station in a futile attempt to stop the midnight broadcast of Sammy's album, Eddie finally lures Sammy into a cassette tape to a police car and starts insulting him until he breaks out and tries to attack Eddie from behind a grate behind a gate in the car, like the bars in the back of the police car. And then Eddie then drives the police car off an unfinished bridge into a river, short-circuiting the tape and destroying Sammy Kerr once and for all. And then pretty much, then he gets the girl in the end, and everything, is good and well in Eddie's world. And yeah, that's the end of a really fun, entertaining movie that has a really cool soundtrack, a cool idea. It's not the most smartest thing ever. Trick or Treat is definitely a movie that you've got to turn your brain off a little bit in order to enjoy the film fully. And some really fun lines of dialogue and fun stuff. I like, there's some good, I like the scenes where Eddie's basically insulting Sammy Kerr. I got a laugh out of that. The stuff where Eddie's turning people into, using his guitar to turn people into dust. I like that scene. I like the visual effects in the film, coming out of the speakers, the electricity that's used in the movie, the visual effects in that. The cameos by Ozzy Osbourne and Gene Simmons, they're really cool. And so, yeah, I really thoroughly enjoy the movie. Is there problems? Yeah, I mean, it's not really gory. If you're looking for gore, there's pretty much next to no gore in this film. So it's not a gory movie. It's not a gore fest. Maybe it might have been even more awesome if he used the electricity. He played the guitar and used the electricity bolts and turned people into bloody chunks. That might have been even more awesome. But still, it's still pretty awesome regardless. But either way, I just thought it was original, inventive, cool, fun movie that I think is unbelievably underrated. Barely nobody talks about Trick or Treat. I mean, there's another movie called Trick or Treat, the anthology film, with Anna Paquin, which I haven't watched yet, which I should. I'm a huge fan of anthology movies. I should be watching that. I should have seen that already. I do have it on DVD, so I do need to watch that sometime. I heard a lot of good things about that. But it seems like that one's getting its respect, and I think there's even a sequel they're going to work on. But Trick or Treat is a movie that I think if you're a fan of the 80s horror, if you're a fan of heavy metal, especially 80s heavy metal, you got to check it out. You may not love it, you may not really enjoy it as much as I do, but, I would hope at least you'd have a good time. But yeah, I'm just saying Trick or Treat's a movie that if you can find it, it's worth at least a look. Because I just think it's a lot of fun, it's entertaining, it's got, it's a nice little time capsule of 80s metal. It really is. It's pretty much a time capsule of 80s metal. You have Ozzy Osbourne and Gene Simmons and cameos, and a lot of people felt that nowadays people are feeling that the soundtrack should have been something else. It should have been a different band, should have been Metallica or Iced Earth or whatever, or something different, somebody who was more metal or heavier than Fastway, which, like I said earlier, that's okay. I can agree with that. I would have liked to see a little heavier, like Wasp or something like that. But as it stands, I still think it's a solid film. I think it's a really enjoyable, fun slice of 80s heavy metal cheese, so to speak. But anyway, I really don't know what to say about Trick or Treat. It's rated out of 5 stars. I'm going to give it 4 out of 5. The only, like I said, a few problems. You know, it's not really a gore fest. There's some pacing issues. There really isn't, honestly, an argument. There isn't really a lot that happens. He tries to get revenge on the bullies, but ultimately doesn't get it. He gets some revenge, but nothing to the caliber of other movies you've seen, like Christine. Nothing like that. There's not a high body count at all. There's a few scenes of Sammy Kerr, but it's really more of Eddie's movie. And the romantic relationship between Eddie and the girl, it was, I mean, I didn't get it. I guess you kind of see where they had the hots for him, and then like actually went with that near the end. But I don't know. It was just one of those typical movie romances where they got to be together because we have to have a boy and a girl. And I thought their chemistry wasn't there. But other than that, I think the film's a really solid movie. I mean, definitely better than a time waster. Definitely better than a 5.5 in my opinion out of 10 on IMDb. And one of the better, in my opinion, the best heavy metal horror film ever made. And that includes Hard Rock Zombies, which I enjoyed, but for a whole nother reason. Because that's definitely a so bad it's good movie. But anyway, folks, thanks for watching my review of Trick or Treat. And keep on rocking.